Hey guys, welcome to the show. My name's Andy Lee, and I'm just really glad to have a good friend of mine, Jenny Petrie, on the show today. She's an incredibly talented singer, and she's been in the kind of music scene for a long time, doing various roles. She's currently a musical director for a choir, and she's trained bands and musicians. And more recently, she's been really pursuing her own material and her own music. So we're going to talk about some really interesting topics and kind of delving deeper into Jenny's life and how she maintains it and even how she got to this point. So Jenny, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi, it's great to have you on, Jenny.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're very musically oriented. How did that start? When did that first become a thing for you?
Well, I started when I was 7. I'm now 33, so I've been at it for a while. But it all started off with me being told I couldn't sing. So yeah, I was quite furious about that, I remember at the time. So we were very fortunate at my primary school to have a fantastic music teacher, and his name was Mr. MacArthur. And he created a choir which everyone could be part of at our school, and then a separate Premier League choir. And the thing is that you had to audition for this Premier League choir. And I remember thinking, and I don't know why, because I wasn't particularly good at anything at that point, but just thinking, oh my gosh, I need to be part of this Premier League choir. And I auditioned, I think about 4 times before I got in, and I remember just increasingly getting more and more angry with the fact that he wasn't letting me in. And on the 4th try, I just thought, right, I've had enough, and I sang as loud as I physically could, because I knew I could sing, but for some reason he wasn't getting it. So I thought, right, okay, I'll just give it an extra boost. And yeah, so luckily he then let me into the choir, and for some reason that time really recognized that I could sing, to the point where he just put me straight in for solos. So not only was I in the Premier League choir finally, but he put me right at the front, and I just got the bug straight away. I was like, I need to be doing this. And I'm definitely someone who needs to be immersed in something to become good at it. And I think, you know, I definitely did immerse myself in it. Music was really something I could sink my teeth into, and I was quite obsessive about it. You know, I remember just locking myself away in my bedroom and listening on repeat to Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, and just being amazed by what they could do and wanting to learn more and more of how they use their voices. And so yeah, then actually went to university and studied musical theatre, and then started off a career more in the music education side of things. So since I started my career at 21, I've always worked for myself, but it's funny because while I loved singing and really wanted to be a singer, I think I sort of thought it was the safer bet to go into the education side of things. So yeah, was in the music education side of things, training bands and professional singers that toured the UK, and also being musical director for the funkychoir.com. And it's literally been over the last year that I've started very actively pursuing the professional singing side of things, because for a few years now, in the background, my manager of the choir has just been saying to me, you need to be a professional singer, you need to be a professional singer, I don't understand why you're not doing it. And also my husband's been really getting at me over it, thankfully. And yeah, so I've just been kind of by accident doing semi-professional stuff over the years, but now really like dedicating my life to making it the main thing that I do, which has just been amazing. It's been really amazing.
That's great, Jenny. So your persistence paid off initially at the age of 7.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't going to be told by your music teacher that you weren't good enough. You're like,
no,
no, you are, at the 4th time of trying. You went in, you conquered, you got the big role, and you're at the front. And then that really, as you mentioned, the commitment and the drive was there all the way throughout, and even throughout university, where you chose musical theatre as something to study. And you said you've always worked for yourself. What was that like? Because there's this passion that you have, and then, you know, generally speaking, people think about financial security, right? They think steady and something consistent. This industry, it isn't always the case. And so back when you were 21, when you graduated, how did you make that choice? And what was it like?
It's a very good question. And I think possibly a very strange answer. I almost felt on some level that because music was the main thing I was good at, no one would employ me to do anything else. So I might as well just go and do that. Honestly, that is what I thought. So in a way, it almost felt as though the financial security was more in the music than in a corporate pathway. Now, I know that that's not entirely true. And I'm sure, knowing what I know now, that I would be employable in lots of different areas, because it's not just down to, it's partially down to the person you are as well, that dictates whether you'll succeed in any field, really. But at the time, it was just like, well, I'm going to succeed in music in whatever capacity I do it. I would definitely say that I fell into the teaching side of it, partially because it is actually quite fascinating. And it is fundamental to the fact to having made me the capable singer that I am, because I understand the anatomy and how it all operates. So what I sometimes have other singers do is come up to me and say, what is it you were doing there? Because a lot of singers know their own voice, but they don't necessarily know how to fully manipulate it and control it to do lots of different things. And that's the benefit I've had. I would definitely say that the teaching was the sensible option, though.
So was that a job, or was it something you set up by yourself and you started to pursue private clients?
So I initially, because I was in a training organisation, I started working for one of the women that was in a higher level than me, and she was actually fantastic in terms of just, you know, being pastoral, sort of guiding me a little bit with it. And then I broke off from that because I felt I had enough knowledge behind me to do it on my own, and have been ever since.
That's great.
Yeah.
Was it at all scary? Was there some type of nervous excitement as you do that, because it's essentially like setting up your own business?
I would say so, to some extent, but then at the same time, I've been employed by organisations on contractual basis. So there was always that was kind of supporting it. It wasn't just alone one-on-one teaching. Instead, it was, you know, I worked as a lecturer for the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts, and also for an organisation which trained up bands and sent them around the UK. So and those contracts actually lasted for quite some time, and then it was a case of sort of making that shift into this professional singing side of things, which was why I kind of let those go, because it was too time consuming as well to have contracts as well as do all the other stuff. I've had this thing in my head for I think about 2.5 to 3 years now, which is do one thing at a time and do it well. And it's really shaped everything, and it's really steered me in a positive way, I think, because it's very easy to become someone who has their hands in, you know, lots of different places, but not necessarily get down to the quality of what you really want to invest in. So for me, that kind of had to go to one side for me to concentrate my efforts in one area, really.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. So the choir you mentioned, musical director for the choir. I mean, that must bring a lot of reward, like, you know, equipping other people.
Yeah, it does, because without sounding too soppy, I think possibly having been told that I couldn't sing when I was 7, I know how it feels. And a lot of people, they come through into the choir saying, I don't have a voice, I can't sing. And then they discover, actually, no, I can. To some capacity. It's up to you, like, where you take it, but everyone has a voice. And I think I went to see Andre Rieu in Maastricht near Amsterdam recently, and then there were a group of opera singers, and one of them in particular was just sensational. You could tell she walked the walk. She was invested, she was focused on doing this one thing and doing it to the best of her ability. And I thought, as I watched her, not only do I get to receive what she's doing, which is phenomenal, but I also get to participate in it. And what a blessing that actually is. Some people, they will love music, but they'll never get to participate in it. And it kind of gave me an insight into what it might be like for people who sing in choirs, where they literally think, oh, I'm not a singer, I can't do that. And then suddenly they find out, oh no, this is for me. This is something that I can do. Not only that, but I have a voice that contributes something. And I think also one of the massive things is that music, I know people say it, but I really do think it's true. Music is so healing. And that's one of the things I think I have managed to wrap my head around over, like, specifically the last couple of years. Music's always been a therapy for me. It's always been a way of me being able to say things out loud that through song that I'm probably a little bit afraid of saying when I'm having a conversation. It's easier to say the things that you can't put into a conversation in a song, and for that to be accepted. And I think that's a massive healing ground for people, whether they know it or not. So to be able to facilitate that for other people, you know, where it's like, I'm just the encourager that kind of pushes them along and goes, yeah, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. But they're really the ones that make it happen. So
yeah,
it is amazing.
It is, because I was just going to say, I mean, we talk about, you know, music education and teaching and training. So there's the skill and the competencies and the technical part of it, but it's so much more than that.
Oh yeah.
As you just mentioned, you know, saying you can do it, you can do it isn't anything to do with technical ability. It's actually helping them with their confidence.
Yes.
And that's a huge part, would you say?
I would definitely say that's a huge part. What strikes me is that the amount of people that get involved in music who were potentially feeling quite depressed, and then their mood is elevated massively by, I think it's partially because of the music and the material, and being involved in something that you perhaps had just cut off from yourself, as that's not an option for me. But I do think, as well as that, being part of a community is such a fundamental part of being human. And I think nowadays that has shrunk a lot. I think a lot of people are feeling isolated and lonely. And so, you know, there's research that shows that if you're lonely, you're more likely to be inflamed. So, you know, just things like that. It's stress relieving. And I know, like, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I get into a group situation, before I've arrived, I can be really, really stressed out and feeling very out of sorts and like, oh, I don't want to be in front of people, and just get me out of here. But then I completely forget about it, and everything just, you know, floats off my shoulders, and I feel a million times better. And I do think there is something quite healing about being in unity in that way as well. And I know from the conversations I've had with people who, I mean, not my choir aside, just that are involved in music, they feel like the weight of the world's been lifted off their shoulders. So, yeah, and to be part of that, and, you know, that's a real blessing, I think. And for people to have an outlet is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that community. You know, human beings, there's a fundamental need for us to all be connected in some way. And I absolutely agree. And, you know, this with a common interest and something as powerful as music, you know, it strikes this really powerful balance.
Yeah.
And so
I think as well as that, just to add slightly to it, I don't know about you, but I hear songs, and sometimes I can feel a bit alone in how I'm feeling about a certain subject. And then a song comes along and I'm obsessed with lyrics, like I can't get enough of them. And there's a song that crops up and I hear it and I listen to the words and I go, oh my gosh, there's someone out there that feels the same way as I do. I'm not a huge weirdo as much as I thought I was. And that in itself, like, can be the most powerful thing in the world, because in a sense, a song can be a kind of weird community within itself, where it's sort of, even though you can't verbalize the way you're feeling, suddenly you go, oh, this is just part of the human experience. This is normal for me to be feeling this way about this particular thing. I think that's really powerful.
And I was just going to ask about that. You mentioned the power of music, and sometimes it helps you to express yourself in a way that you maybe normally can't in conversation or when just talking. So the right type of song is super powerful. Like you pay a lot of attention to the lyrics. Does that extend then to the artist? Like how much do you want to know about the artist and the meaning behind the lyrics, or do you just focus on the lyrics and your interpretation of them?
So do you mean, like, do I try and find out the backstory about the person?
Yeah, like, yeah, do you say necessarily feel it's important to resonate with the values of the artist who wrote the song that you maybe particularly really resonated with? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm always very interested to where something has come from. I think I'm always very intrigued about what's happened to a person that helps me sort of get a context of where the song originated from. How was the person feeling at the time? You know, how much are they willing to let you in on that? Sometimes artists don't want to explain where it's come from. They want you just to receive it as your own interpretation. But I would definitely say that that is the case for me, where I'll make it about them. I'll also make it about me. So there was a particular song actually that I did not so long ago, and when I originally heard it, I couldn't stop listening to it, because what it made me realize is, so my grandpa died when I was 13, and he was just like the first person I ever like loved in such a deep way, you know, like it just, we were so close. And when I heard that song, I just felt like I was grieving for him on a new level that I hadn't possibly as a child really understood how much it hurt me, like when he'd gone. So there was something extremely cathartic about that.
Mm.
And I do think that even sort of 20 years later, I'm healing over it in a way that I never, you know, I'll never get over it, but you know, that's just part of being human. But I know from having watched videos of the person who wrote it that she in particular wrote it at a time where she said, I wrote this song never knowing if anyone would hear it, feeling so alone, as though, you know, no one had ever felt the way I felt in that moment, and here we are today and I'm performing it to you. And the whole crowd were singing back to her. So she wrote it without an outcome in mind, but it was so powerful, just that ability to stop and immerse yourself in your emotions and try and get them out on paper. Suddenly it transforms into being in front of millions of people. And she didn't go into the detail of it, but I knew that from what she'd said that she was very heartbroken. And I think we can all be heartbroken in some capacity. And she was just so good at communicating it that for whatever reason, my heart latched onto it and sort of went along with it. And one of the things I do get, this has been a common piece of information from people who have listened to my recordings or watched them, is oh, I never realized those were the words. So they love the song, but they never realized those were the words. And that makes me really happy, because it's sort of like, oh, you made me listen to it differently. Yeah, so I think if you're a singer, you really have to get down to the what does it mean to you, because if you don't get it, the audience won't. And that's why I have to connect emotionally with a song for me to put it out there, because I know people will know I'm lying if it's something that's not authentic. Yeah,
Sure. So that really shines through. Hey, that lack of connection is quite, it can come through maybe in a subtle way, but it's noticeable.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Jenny, I'm curious, like, do you mind sharing that song? What that song was and who is by, actually?
Yeah, it's Lost Without You by Freya Ridings.
Okay, fantastic. So you meant so then 2 years ago, I think you said, you made the decision to pursue your own music.
Yeah, it was about a year and a half ago.
What was the trigger for that?
Yeah, okay. So the main trigger for that is that my manager from my choir had been going on at me in a very loving way. Why are you not singing? You need to be singing professionally. That's where you're going to do your best. That's where you're going to excel. And I kind of was a bit like, oh, that sounds nice. That sounds like fun. I'm terrified. And then equally, my husband was saying exactly the same thing, you know, really making a point of it and saying how frustrated he was that someone, I hate to say it, but, you know, someone as talented as I am, and that's not my words, that's his, was not pursuing it. And then when we had the Manchester, the MEN Arena attacks, Ariana Grande did the One Love concerts, and so they actually had Parswood High School come along and sing, I can't remember which song it is anyway, but they started it off with one of the girls from the school singing a solo, and then Ariana came in and started singing the second verse. And this girl was about 12 and just like so tiny you could fit her in your pocket. She was gorgeous. And So she starts singing this song, and I'm watching her, and I'm thinking, she is in front of millions of people, and this is televised, and she is just amazing. And just the way that she was so emotive, I was just bawling my eyes out. And then Graham turned to me and he said, "You want to be doing that, don't you?" And I was like, "I really do." Just inconsolable, you know, when you just look as ugly as anything and your eyeballs have like seized up and there's just mascara everywhere. So I look very much like Ozzy Osbourne. But yeah, so not that Ozzy's ugly, he's lovely. But
we've all got our looks. So
we
that
do,
was
we do.
so that was the moment for you then, and that's really like you had that encouragement and you kind of went for it. And what's
Well,
that
it's funny, you know, like you talk about moments.
Yeah.
I think there still needed to be a little bit of a, I like to see myself as a donkey that needs to be kicked up the hill. And like, I really want to do this, you know, but it's been a number of moments of realizations of like, yeah, I really should be doing this, mainly from the point of view that it'll keep my sanity in check, because the more I do it, the more I feel great.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, which doesn't make any sense, because really you're exposing yourself to like the utmost extreme, and you're constantly putting yourself in high pressure situations and, you know, kind of facing rejection in a massive way. But there's something about it that's just got to keep doing it, got to keep doing it. This is where I need to be, and I can't explain it, but it feels that way.
What do you think, Jenny, was the you know, and it's fantastic. About 2.5 years ago, this happened. What do you think it was that prevented you from pursuing it earlier? Was it just circumstances, or was it something with you awareness of yourself and what you were going through?
Do you know what? I've thought about this quite a bit, and what I do notice is that I'm not very good at listening to my heart. And I think in that MEN Arena, like One Love concert, I heard my heart, and I lead with my head too much. And I don't mean to sound all bohemian and artisty, but, you know, it sort of is true. And I think, you know, it is scary going into something that isn't certain. I mean, gosh, you know, people can tell you, you know, this isn't certain, this isn't reliable, but I'm sort of like, well, I've got to try.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And also, you know, I kind of have had a few messages that kind of make me think, yeah, this is where I need to be.
Yeah, that's great. And
it's not just this is where I want to be. It's this is where I need to be.
It's where you need to be. It's like it's like your purpose. You can't deny it. It's like that, you know, you said you open up your heart. Once you listen to it, you recognize you've got to follow that.
Yeah.
You know, once it's open, you can't put it back in again.
Yeah.
I love it. And then the journey then from that point onwards for you, you mentioned it's massively revealing and exposing like environment, isn't it? Doing what you're doing.
Oh, it's hideous. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned the rejection, you know, potential. How do you deal with that? I mean, it must be developing a sense of a new level of resilience for you. How do you handle those, I presume, sometimes up and down moments?
Well, the weird thing about me, I think my family would say, is that I'm extremely resilient. I wouldn't say that, but they would. So if you ask my sister, she would say that's the defining thing. It's just that I possibly haven't opened myself up to this platform until, you know, recently. But yeah, just in general, I don't know where that comes from though. I mean, I did almost die when I was about 18 months old, and I don't know if there's a little bit of, you know, so like the whole, oh, you've worked for yourself since university. Well, I don't know any different. So some people call that resilience, which it must be to some extent, you know, to turn up every day and just make your own living. It must be, but I don't know any different. So it's kind of like, sorry, what was the question? Completely.
Yeah, no, you've answered it. I think you've answered it. It was
right. Yeah. What I will say is, though, I would definitely say that my relationship with my husband is very open, and he sees all the ugly bits where I kind of fall apart and go, oh, that looks terrible. So there was an occasion, quite not maybe about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, where I went to an audition. You know, when you have those days where you're really not firing on all cylinders, it was one of those. It was a morning audition. And so I did This Is Me from The Greatest Showman and All I Ask by Adele, but it was like 4 key changes higher. So didn't really set myself up very well, considering it was like 9 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, so walked into this very prestigious venue and went to go and do the audition. Was actually feeling fine before I walked in, start singing, and you've never heard anything like it. It was like cats wailing. And so what I got the sense of was that there were about 300 people auditioning that day, and I was the first to leave. As in, they were like, yeah, it's not happening. Oh. And it's like, I wouldn't have taken me, so that's fine. Yeah. So on that particular occasion, my husband got a call from me, like with me stood on a tram platform, crying my eyes out, being absolutely devastated. But the way I see it now is, well, nothing can ever go that badly again, surely. So, you know, and I think it is a case of, like, I definitely have my moments of just terrible, and but I do pick myself back up, because I'm not going to learn otherwise, you know. And I've learned a lot. I do think it's true what people say. You learn a lot more through your failures than you do from your successes. And actually, I've found that my audition process is much better now.
That's really good. And and what you've done there, Jenny, is recognizing that statement is true is one thing, like, but seeing it in that way sometimes is difficult. It's like, you can learn from our failures, but they're missing that gap of, well, how do you look at that situation as a lesson to learn from, versus something that just scares you to ever try that thing again. Do you know what I mean?
Well, even look at it from this point of view. The rejection of that situation, if you channel it the right way, fuels the way that you sing songs. Because you can't be a perfect person when you're singing a song. You've got to show everything. Got to be real, because people recognize when you're faking it. So I just kind of think, well, do you know what? If there's anyone out there that's failed really well, it's me. So I'm kind of like, right, okay, well, how can I use that, you know?
It's good. Yeah, it's good. So interesting. I've got a couple more things, really. Like, being a singer, being as devoted as you are there some other aspects in your life that you have to really commit to this, like the mental, emotional, physical type of things to help maintain this? You know, because you mentioned the word immersive before.
Oh yeah, it's a lifestyle. It's not something you...
It's not like I go play football at the weekends, that type of thing, and then that's it.
No, and I know that there are people who push their luck, but it's like this. If I want to do something well, so I say to myself, right, this comes at a cost. So that means sleep, lots and lots of sleep. It means exercising regularly, partially because the body that I have houses the instrument that I use. It means really taking care of myself. So I went away with my friend recently to London and we had a couple of drinks, but I would not usually do that because I know that that comes at a cost for me as an individual, that my voice doesn't operate well if I'm drinking. So I think there are a lot of people that have the rock and roll lifestyle and they can get away with it for a certain amount of time, but they won't have a voice when they're in their 40s. Because it's a bit like, okay, you smoke. So you may not feel ill in the moment, but it will catch up with you. Everyone's got a limit. And luckily for me, I will definitely say this, I had some health issues a few years ago. And I think that was a real blessing, really, because what I was doing was, without realizing it, not taking as good care of myself as I should have been. And so what that makes me think now is I really have to look after myself to be able to have the quality of life that I want, to be able to really enjoy being in those settings where I get to do the thing that I love. It does come at a cost, and that's okay. So I think, like, some people might think I'm a bit boring. Like, you know, if they got to see my life, you know, the ins and outs of it, oh, it's very, you know, it's very routine and it's very boring. But the reality is you don't get great at, you know, you don't get really good at something without committing yourself. And that's how I live.
It's good. So much focus, right?
I think so. I think I'm very drawn to focus, though. I like focus. Yeah.
So I was going to ask, like, so doing that, some people say, oh, you're so disciplined and there's so much sacrifice. It must be really difficult. Like, for you, Jenny, do you find, are those decisions to have those kind of routines in place, to live the kind of lifestyle that supports your passion? Is it easy or hard? Where is that on the spectrum for you?
I'd find it a hell of a lot harder doing a 9 to 5 in a corporate job. So no, it doesn't. Yeah, I'd find it a hell of a lot harder.
It's good.
So it's not really a payout. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't mean this sort of disrespectfully to anyone else, because obviously everyone's experience is different. But I don't want to go out and get drunk and then kind of wake up on the next day and not function well. I'd rather just make the most of what I have. So yeah, I suppose, like, the thing is, I probably, don't get me wrong, I love donuts and like cakes and everything like that, but yeah, for me, I think those moments of performing are just, they're the thing that I live for. It's not, you know, and hopefully one day my dream of being Celine Dion's backing singer is going to come true. And if I waste that on going on nights out, I'm going to be really annoyed.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, talk about being really annoyed. I really want that. So, you know, it's not a compromise.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, and having that clarity in your goals and what you want to aim for, it just makes those decisions so much easier, right?
It does. And don't get me wrong, like, sometimes I'll turn up at the gym and I'll be like, oh God, I can't be bothered. But yeah, I mean, like, to be a woman lifting weights and like always being able to see how much you've improved, that's a high in itself. Like, yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah, I want to be a strong woman. I don't want to be average.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's super clear that you are a strong woman, Jenny. And
So.
do you find that, do you recognize the example and the model that you're setting for other people, you know, other women, or in your industry or in general? Like, how important is that to you? Do you see that as a responsibility?
I do see that as a responsibility. I've actually been watching the Suffragette film today. You know, the one, yeah. So yeah, massively. Oh, I think women are women are way stronger and more powerful than anyone could ever really give us credit for. And it's really funny because I'm part of this exercise class community of women, and when we're together, it just feels like an army. It's weird, you know. And like then Amy, the instructor, plays Beyonce, and I feel like a badass. I'm not, but I feel like one in the moment. So yeah, and then also I've got some nieces now, and my oldest niece is 2 years old. And you know, having grown up in an environment where, yes, okay, there is more equality, but there's an awful lot of inequality, and there's an awful lot of emphasis on how girls look. It's not healthy for them. It's very reductive, and I am like, I mean, I personally don't have children, and I don't know if I want them, and that's mine and my husband's decision. That's our choice. But what I do want to do is absolutely set an example for my nieces, and I want them to see women who are being themselves to the best of their ability, and who go, "Ooh, that's a little bit hard to do, but I'm going to try." You know, God loves a trier. So I really want for them to see that it's not a case of girls can't do sport, you know, which I definitely had. You know, I definitely had that. And as a 33-year-old woman, I'm now, you know, only over the last few years, I'm really discovering how physical I am. You know, how not to say that I'm, you know, Usain Bolt or anything. God, no, not at all. But you know, it's a lot of the time I think women are told that's not for you. Why do you think that you can do that? Whereas I just so want them to go, do you know what, the sky's the limit, and it's going to possibly be quite hard to get to the places I want to go, but it's well worth doing, and I should be really confident about that because I'm capable of doing something. And I'm not going to shrink. I really want that for them.
It's so good. It's powerful, isn't it? And just reversing the beliefs that people have had put on them by others, you know, through their judgment and through their filtered views of what things should be like, you know. And you're
absolutely. And I think, honestly, in all honesty, I think that's what was possibly driving me in the non-pursuit of singing. I think I'd had it drilled into me from a young age, all the things I couldn't do. And unfortunately, unconsciously as well, to some extent, those things were operating in the background. And it's taken a bit of time for me to grow the confidence, to grow being the key word, but I've got there. I've got there where I'm willing to just make a fool of myself and just try. And that's all that can really be asked of a person, I think. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jenny, thank you so much. You're an incredible person doing incredible things. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
How do you intend to increase your impact then going forward?
It's a very good question. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Perfect.
I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, yeah.
It's perfect.
I just think that will be the natural byproduct. I think when you follow the thing that you are made for, and I hate to say that in a way, because I know not everyone knows what they're made for, and that's an ongoing journey for everyone. So please, God, I use the journey word. But but even if you don't know what your calling, if you want to call it that, is, keep pursuing it and keep encouraging yourself, because you know you will find it. And I think, as well as that, if there's a flow to what you're doing, not to say that it's perfect, but if there's a flow to what you're doing when you're doing it, it's important to pursue that, because I think as a natural byproduct, you will have the most influence and the biggest impact that you can have as an individual. And it's not something that you have to try really hard at with gritted teeth. Instead, you just let it happen. I think that's really important.
That's good. So there's an ease and I love that word, flow to it, coming from listening to your heart.
That's it. It's there somewhere.
Absolutely. Jenny, thank you. I've loved having you on, and I've loved listening to your story. And you've made some very great points and insight, and I know that this will be an encouragement to many other people who will watch and listen to this. So thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you for inviting me. I'm very privileged.
Well, speak soon, Jenny. Take care for now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bye.
All right, take care. Bye.